a different dynamic because you don't have that.
Agreed. I couldn't agree more. Last thing I want to talk about here before we get off the NFL, a couple of Chargers. They signed McNeil to an extension, Marcus McNeil, their left tackle, which Phillip Rivers absolutely loves right now. But Sean Merriman's career as a Charger appears over. And here's a guy, Jesse, I mean, when he came, and I don't want to steal his nickname here, but he had a couple of years there where he was just lights out. I mean, he might have been the best linebacker in football. Then comes the 4-game suspension for steroids, and he really hasn't been the same since because he can't stay healthy. And, I mean, if Merriman never plays another game with the Chargers, what's his legacy as a Charger?
Well, he becomes the amazing talent, the dominant player that just fell apart in his health. And who knows if the steroids contributed to that, whether they contributed to the fact that he stayed healthy early, if he was an injury-prone type guy, or if when he stopped that his body fell apart. But I don't think there is any denying. I don't think at the end, they'll remember the dominant Sean Merriman.
Yeah, speaking of Chargers, last NFL note, does Vincent Jackson play a game this year for the San Diego Chargers?
Well, I just got a report. I just read from Mortensen that he said that both Mankins in New England and Jackson for San Diego will report to their teams. I believe they both will play.
Well, that is more good news for Phillip Rivers, who the Chargers are struggling right now, and they need all the help they can get. Again, if you want to give us a call, we can always go back and talk some NFL if you want, and just call it 619-768-2949. Again, stop by Sports Haze. Check out all the great writing on there. Jess, myself, John Hursberger will be calling in tonight. He's on there. Lots of great writers. Anything you want to read, you can find on there. But let's talk some baseball here, Jess. Obviously, we are down to 4, and you were looking pretty good with your Texas Rangers pick. I actually took the Rays for a little bit of a run there, but weird series. The road team wins each game, but boy, the Rangers are just that team that went out and they had the chance to improve. And you see these teams from time to time, and the Rangers just improved so much by acquiring talent, and Cliff Lee at the top of that list, and boy, did he pay dividends.
Absolutely. I mean, Cliff Lee ended up being the difference maker, at least in that series. But if you look at the way that they played, they were very aggressive. They got contributions from all sorts. They had got contributions from everyone except for, oddly enough, Josh Hamilton, he did not have a good series, but it was the aggressive management, it was aggressive base running, and it was basically, hey, we're not going to go quietly, so we're going to make things happen, and they're going to have to do that in the next series against the Yankees to continue to have success. And, of course, they're going to have to win at least one game at home. They're going to continue the trend of winning on the road. They have to win one at home because they have home field.
You know what, though? And I've watched I think 6 of those games this year. The Rangers are not scared of the New York Yankees. Not one bit. And especially in that ballpark, the Rangers can score with them. And I tell you what, other than your top Yankees pitchers, Sabathia and maybe Hughes, and I tell you what, I still take, if I got one game to win in the postseason, I'm probably still giving the ball to Andy Pettitte. That's how much confidence I have in him in October. But you get further, A.J. Burnett's going to start game 4. And, Cliff Lee gets pushed back to, I think, game 2, maybe game 3 now. I have to look exactly. And, I think the Rangers can pitch with him. I'd probably still give the edge to Rivera, but Feliz is no joke in the 9th inning. And I just don't think this is a cakewalk for the Yankees. I think the Rangers can hang with them.
Well, I mean, after the Minnesota Twins, both the Rays and the Rangers posed matchup difficulties for the Yankees. I still feel pretty confident about the Rangers pick. Wilson going against Sabathia in Game 1, that could go either way. Sabathia's great. Wilson showed his stuff in the playoffs as well against the Rays. Game 2, you've got Lewis against Hughes. At least right now what it's looking at, it says that Game 3 will be Lee versus Pettitte. That will be a great matchup. Andy Pettitte great in the postseason. Cliff Lee unhittable practically in the postseason. That they might not score, and no one might score in that game. Then after that, you're gonna get Hunter versus Burnett, and I at least in that one, I definitely I don't trust A.J. Burnett. I don't know how anyone can after what he's done or not done in the case of since he came to the Yankees. It's been a very good series.
Speaking of not being able to score, let's take a look at the National League, where we are given a treat Saturday night to see Roy Halladay match up against Tim Lincecum. If you are a fan of good pitching, make sure you see this game. Now that I said that, it's going to be an 11-9 kind of game, but I feel, and I just wrote an article here on Sports Haze, check it out, about that Tim Lincecum, Roy Halladay could be the greatest postseason pitching matchup of all time. Thoughts?
It could be. The only way that would be one-up is if later this year in the postseason, in the World Series, we get Halladay versus Cliff Lee. That would be epic. That's as good a postseason matchup as you can get. Granted, back you had Clemens good, and as more recently in 01 with the Diamondbacks, you had Schilling versus Clemens in that Game 7. Goodness. But this is as tight a game as you could come up with. This is one of those games where you sit back and say, even if you're going to watch it, you still bust out the DVR, record it, keep it in there for as long as it's possible. That's going to be historic.
What's even better is these guys are probably going to hook up twice, possibly. And I just think if you're a fan of pitching, you have to watch this game. Have to pay attention to the series. I actually, when I wrote this article, I went down through the last 30 years. I found some good luck. Jack Morris against John Smoltz. I was always a fan of Dwight Gooden against Roger Clemens. There was Clemens versus Pedro against Clemens. Maddox against Randy Johnson. There's a ton of those epic matchups, but I tell you what, I will put Halladay and Lincecum up with all of them. I think these two guys are that good. But let's talk about baseball here. We're going to have a special guest here in a moment. And let's talk something that we love, and that is college football. And I want to start right off the bat. The BCS coming out this week. Are you a fan, Jeff, or aren't you a fan? And on that, does it work or doesn't it work?
I think in the end it works when it comes to matching up the two best teams. It's hard to deny that in the end, number one versus number two, almost every year has been clearly number one and number two, and you get the best team out of those two. But where it gets the BCS gets tricky is the fact that it doesn't consider, well, what about number 3 and 4, and could they be the number 1 and number 2? I personally haven't ever had a big issue with the BCS. Would a playoff be better? I think so. But then you run into the issues of depending how many teams in the playoff. You go 14, you go 16, you go 18. And at that point, then you're going to run into, especially once usually you get past your unbeatens or your one-loss teams from the big-time conferences. If you get into the playoff setting, then it becomes a bit grayer, the decision-making of who gets into the playoff and who doesn't, thus causing some issues with those, say, number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10. Should they have been in the playoffs? Should they have not? It looks like in the end you would have had the same controversy either way. And I do, the argument that is used about the BCS is that every game matters. There is some credence to that, because if you lose a game, depending on what happens to the rest of the league, you could be out. And you could lose a game and get in still.
We are joined by John Hirschberger, our Sports Haze college football analysis. John, give me 1 second. I'll be right with you. Here's how the BCS works in my mind, and here's how it should work. First of all, you get rid of the preseason poll. The preseason poll should not be a poll till week 5. Therefore, and the poll gets based on quality games you win. Therefore, that makes teams schedule. And therefore, if teams schedule, therefore, we talked about last week, John, Jess, we talked about when Oregon jumped Boise, because Boise beat whoever they played they beat them by 35. Well, why doesn't Ohio State drop for pummeling Ohio by 60? There's my issue with the whole thing. I think in the end, the VCS works.